All right, and welcome back. It's now time for us to get into Iron Politics. And before that, how about I take you through the front page of our local daily pretty fast. My guest already in studio. I have got Franco Cheri, who is a wakili. You're getting into that. And Crispus Wathimba, who is a political analyst and an engineer by profession. Shortly getting into that. But how about we get through the front page? Okay. Wacha nikusome, but after this, get your copy, okay? So on the front page, tales of 1,000 cops injured, crying for help. Tales of 1,000 injured cops crying for help. That is now the officers injured in line of duty enduring psychological distress. That is on the front page of the Star newspaper. The claims are piling up as NHIF says that Treasury yet to release funds. That is their cry. Tales of 1,000 injured cops crying for help on the front page of the Star newspaper here. And of course, there is a big headache for both big political parties, that is Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, as they gear up for the grassroots election slated for later this year. And sometimes next year for Azimio. Okay, that is on the front page of the Star newspaper. Race for LSK top job intensify as aspirants focus on young lawyers. The current office will be getting out sometimes next year, and they are now gearing up for that election. Young lawyers are gearing for such positions. Who will hear us? Now there is a big question. Cry of injured cops chasing state compensation. And according to the law, they are supposed to be compensated while line of duty. But now the issue here is they are crying on who will help them. Some of them saying that their legs were blown up in an improvised explosive devices while on duty. Some different situations they're facing as far as this is concerned. So cops injured in line of duty complain of delayed compensation as reported on this. It's a complete page of this particular newspaper. Says that close to 1,000 police officers are affected and 6 billion shillings paid out to injured officers by NHIF so far. And insurance was only for 2 years, running from 2021 and 2022. And most of the complaining officers have been cleared by WIBA. Doctors also to receive payment. That is what's here. And finally, payout is given on case-by-case basis after lengthy verification. Now, that is the main read as this is concerned. It's on the full page of the Star newspaper. Very quickly, before we get into our discussion, roads cash diverted in Uhuru era to punish Ruto, says CS Murkomen. Some areas were denied money. 700 billion shillings needed to finish work, according to CS Kipchumba Murkomen. Ruto urges Meru leaders to end their wrangles and work together. The feud in Meru County has been going on for quite some time now, and it's it's over 1 year. It's over 1 year now, and under the boss, Kawira Mwangaza, the president again put his word yesterday that they need to put aside their differences and work for the people of Meru County. Ruto and Raila party election headache. UDA will conduct grassroots polls in December and ODM in February 2024. Now, Ruto's ruling party, that is UDA, has announced that it will conduct grassroots election in December, while Raila's ODM has slotted the exercise for February 2024. And of course, we all know how grassroots election has been a thorn in the flesh and a hot potato for most outfits. And to avoid opting the headhunt of personalities who will carry the flag and, of course, members come next year general election. And finally, on politics, keep of server issue. DP tells Azimio Kenya Kwanza dialogue team. He was speaking in Meru, saying that they should drop that issue of opening of the server as far as that is concerned. But we know that the dialogue team will also be starting their conversation, and they are sitting today at the ground zero, that is Bomas of Kenya. How is it going to happen? Engineer Crispus Wathimba, good morning. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Karibu sana.
Yes, karibu.
How is Nakuru?
Not bad. Bit wet.
Yes.
We are experiencing the rains. I think the El Nino has already started. So challenges in terms of the drainage system in Nakuru, but we trust we'll be able to manage it very soon.
Yeah. The El Nino is here. Are you ready?
Yes.
You have a responsibility. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, we have a responsibility to make sure the city is good to run. People can be able to move around,
yes,
and the infrastructure is working. So we have some work to do, and we trust that we should be able to deliver before the heavy rains come through.
Let me talk to Frank Nyamari, who is a Wakili and a political analyst. Wakili, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So far, tales of 1,000 cops injured. Let me start with the front page of the Daily Star newspaper as we get into this. I'm wondering why you're not in this list of the young lawyers who are gunning for the position of LSK job.
Time will come.
Why are you not here?
Time will come.
It
is work in progress.
Okay.
It is work in progress. At the moment, we look at those who are ahead of us, and we give them the requisite support that they require, even as we learn. You don't just get into the field of football if you don't know how to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
So you must learn and get a few experiences and knowledge here and there. Then you can throw yourself into the ring.
How is the office currently as compared to your predecessors and of course some of the people who have been in the office before?
Mr. Eric Deuri has done a tremendous job. He has streamlined the LSK, the Law Society. He has actually articulated most of the issues that have arisen, either politically, economically. He has represented the LSK as far much better than the previous president that we had. Going forward, we look forward to a person who is going to bring this vibrant energy that has always been lacking. And Eric Deuri has done a very, very good job in trying to put the sentiments of the LSK and the lawyers in the country into the perspective and the space that they require.
Yeah. Brian Onyango is also advocate of the High Court. Brian, things are moving on. Karibu sana to the program.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
What I can say about what is going on in this country now is we are facing a dynamic shift from a political process where lawyers were about vibrance and talking too much for and against the government to an issue-based leadership. Like my learned friend has said, Mr. Theuri has consolidated the unity of lawyers together and addressed these issues that affect lawyers in a very comprehensive manner. You've seen him go and liaise with government offices, non-governmental organizations, and even international association of lawyers. So what lawyers are looking for this time round is a person who will then return the vibrance, because the vibrance was lost during the last term when there were some ideological differences, which I believe Mr. Theuri has succeeded in putting together. And the way the Law Society operates is that it is more effective when lawyers are united. So I think he has achieved the unity and the cooperation with government and non-governmental organizations. And now the next step is to see how far we can then return the vibrance and see into the preservation of the rule of law.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just a question. I'm being asked here. Why are you calling yourself learned friends? You are also learned. Crispus Wathimba is also learned. He's an engineer. Why are you learned? You're so mean to us, the rest of us. Why learned friends?
Yes, you see, and when we say learned, it doesn't mean the others are not.
Does it mean that the rest of us are not learned?
Yeah, I think we're learned. You guys are educated. Yes.
Crispus, we are educated.
I get you.
We are educated. Okay, we need to get learned, but a later note though. Okay, gentlemen, welcome to the program. So let me just get into this. The story on the front page of the Star newspaper tells 1,000 injured cops crying for help. What do you make of this story? Let me start with you, Nyamari.
Yes. We first of all have to look at the service that these men and women have offered this country.
Yes.
And recognize that service as being noble. After that recognition, then we can look at what the law says in terms of compensation when they have been injured while on duty. I want to say that these men and women looking at the service that they have offered this country ever since independence, ever since they joined those forces, it has been tremendous. And there is no question as to why they should not be compensated when they get injured in the line of duty. It is a failure in the part of the government. It is something that we have to point out clearly and say that the government is failing, terribly failing, in not compensating these men and women. The law in respect to compensation of victims on the disciplined forces or those who are on the line of the police and the military is also clear. That once they get injured, they should be compensated, and not just compensation, but adequate compensation to push them to the next level in life. So in my own view, it is a wake up to the, it's a bell rung to the government that if we continue in the trend that we are going, it is going to be very difficult to appeal to other young men and women to come into the service and offer service to this country.
That is some kind of, because Crispus, these are disciplined force, and for them to talk, it requires some sense of bureaucracy. And for them, or for such a story to be highlighted on a national newspaper like this one, then it means it's a deep-rooted problem that no one is ready to talk about. But talk about the morale in the service. What do you see on that?
Well, the fact that they are coming out to speak, that tells you they've probably been holding this matter for a very long time, but it has reached a point where they feel they cannot hold it further. And therefore it will probably give signs that, or credence to the fact that there could be some moral issues, and we as a country should be concerned. And the bosses or the men in charge of the police force should get concerned and do what is required. But also, if you look at the numbers that you've mentioned, 1,000 police officers, in a country where we have 100,000 police officers, it means for every 100 soldiers, one is already injured. That's a very huge number, and we need to be concerned. Why are so many of our men getting injured? Is it that they have the wrong equipment? Is it that the wrong training they are facing? Is it that they are exposed to a lot of danger? We need to evaluate ourselves, because those are very high numbers. For every 100 of our men getting injured, it's a big concern. But also it put a strain on the insurance system, because the insurance system, I don't see it foreseeing such a high number of injuries to be compensated. When you have 1 in every 100 people who have been insured getting demanding an insurance cover, a compensation, then that puts a strain to the fund. So probably it tells to the challenges that the fund might be going through in terms of how much it can be able to compensate, and we need to look into that. But also, how long has this matter been there? Probably the other administration was not looking at the interest of the policemen as much as they ought to be. So we need to also address some of the injustices that have been there in terms of the welfare of our men and women of the police force.
And you know, Brian, some of these cases, probably when you talk about the compensation, it's not even in the forces itself. It cuts across. You know, we've had people complaining that they were in line of duty, but 1 or 2 accidents do happen. But generally, it points about the issue of insurance and payouts and compensation. It's a big issue in this country. How can we turn around the whole bad story and give every Kenyan a chance that if you are injured line of duty, then you are assured of your compensation?
Yes, thank you. And I really appreciate the fact that the national broadcaster is bringing this as a conversation. Under the law, because we also look at other systems that are working.
Yes.
In other developed states like the USA, the soldiers and the police service have a legislation called the Veterans Act. Now, under the Veterans Act, so long as you have completed your years of service and it has been cut short either by way of injury or by retirement, you're entitled to a particular a form of life where you are entitled to good medical cover and a good life, so to speak. And here in Kenya, the Kenya Defence Forces Act provides for mechanisms of compensating soldiers who have been injured in the line of duty. The National Police Service Act and the Constitution of Kenya now creates the National Police Service Commission. Now, if you look at the previous dispensation, the National Police Service Commission is the employer of all police officers, and one of their duties under the Constitution is to ensure that the welfare of the National Police is well catered for. And what they've been doing is that they've been mapping out, I've seen them map out the number of police officers and the reasons for their injury and the conditions of their service. But most importantly, like you mentioned, this is a highlight of the disciplined forces. But this is actually a problem that is facing the entire workforce. And in the Kenyan law, we now have the Work Injury Benefits Act.
Yes.
Now, the Work Injury Benefits Act provides that if you're in the line of duty and you've taken all necessary precautions, for example, if your line of duty requires you to have a helmet, to have some particular gear, if you're a rider, to have all the protective gears, and you still get hurt or you still get injured, that legislation creates an office called the Director of Occupational Safety and Health. Now, the Director of Occupational Safety and Health is required to make an assessment of the extent of your injury, so that whenever you get hurt, you go to a doctor that is approved by the Director of Occupational Safety and Health, and this doctor will state in his report that you've been hurt, your finger has been chopped off, and then the Director of Safety and Health will compute a compensation. Basically, what will happen is that he will give you a percentage of your salary, mostly 96 months, and also he can also prescribe the amount of measures that your employer should take.
Right.
And if you look at that legislation, where an employer is unable to cater for these requirements for your treatment and your care post-injury and post-work, the law provides for a particular fund that would then be required to come in to compensate. And the legislation also requires that every employer must take a work injury benefits insurance cover. So this conversation should even go into the insurance regulatory authority, because I have had cases where the Director of Health has said this individual got hurt during his years of service, but the insurance company has refused to pay.
Yes.
So it is also a wake-up call to the insurance regulatory sector to ensure that insurance companies who are required to pay compensation for workers are required to do so, and if they are not, and if they don't do so, they get sanctioned. But generally, all Kenyans must always remember that in your line of duty, you should always ensure that your employer has put mechanisms, number one, to guarantee your safety, because it's also not about just getting hurt and getting compensated. So you have to take care of your safety, and later to ensure that your employer has put mechanisms that in the unlikely event that you get injured, you can be compensated.
Perfect. At least that is the bare minimum that every person under the sun will always talk about. I mean, perfectly said. We'll get into the details of that, because it's a pull-out and a complete page here on the front page of the Star newspaper. Very quickly, on the front page of the Daily Nation, 48 hours of drama at Bomas. 48 hours of drama at Bomas. Now, this is as far as the 2022 general election is concerned. By the way, 1 year is almost gone. It's over. So the 2022 general election, President William Ruto is now marking 1 year in office this week. We'll be taking a look at some of the achievements and probably some of the places that he needs to improve on in as far as his administration is concerned. And as the anniversary is coming here, as a tense and anxious nation waited for the announcement of the next president, the National Tallying Center in Nairobi, that was Bomas of Kenya, were receiving visitors with various requests to the IBC chairman of Oloo Chebukati and his team. By the events of August 14th and 15th were possibly the defining moments of the election. What do you remember of the Bomas? For me, I remember the choir. I remember the choir. We'll be talking about shortly when we come back after this break. Stay with us. and welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. It's 7:32. If you're still in the house, let me get you through the front page of the Daily Nation very quickly. 48 hours of drama at Bomas of Kenya. Gentlemen, we can all remember what really happened last year. A year is gone, so to speak. A year is gone, and here we are looking into the next phase of this administration. But as we all pensively looked at the television and waited for the results and what's happening, let me start with you, Nyamari. What really comes back before, because this is a complete story by Wafula Chebukati himself, who is out of the picture for some time now.
Without being personal,
Disclaimer.
Yes.
Okay.
I vividly remember the shiny head of Wafula Chebukati and the rungu that Senator Ledama Olekina was holding, ready to hit somebody for speaking or announcing results that were not favoring the Azimio team.
Yes.
But however, we learned a very important lesson in respect to how our elections ought to be conducted and the entire process, which ought to be open, credible, and yes, there are a lot of sound memories that we can recall from that experience, especially the last day when the election was going to be announced. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crispus, 1 year down the line, and Kenyans can never forget. 48 hours waiting, who is going to be the next? Accusations from each political side, agents, etc., etc. The choir, remember the choir, which kept us going for. That was a nice soundtrack. What do you make of that, 48 hours?
Well, for me, I think as a country, we still have a lot to do in terms of giving ourselves credible elections. Because having gone through 2007 and still finding ourselves here in 2022, it means that we still haven't learned enough lessons and we haven't developed the systems that we require to provide a transparent election as we expect, given that even up to today, we are still talking about auditing the elections. So I hope that probably in the next 3 years, we will be able to develop the infrastructure and the character to be able to deliver an election that nobody will question. The international community gave us a clean bill of health, which we agree. But also we need to agree that there were attempts to manipulate the process at that point. And if you look at the countries that have gone through coups in the last 6 months in Africa, it was a similar kind of arrangement where somebody feels you are not supposed to be in power, and with a few men, like the men who were at Bomas, took power. The likes of Oledema having a rungu. Probably if he had used that rungu, Ruto would not be president today, because we don't know what would have happened.
Devil's advocate said that Oledama Olekina was just being a Maasai. Maasai
but if he injured the chairman of IEBC, then he had to be taken to hospital. Then he would not declare the election.
Why were you?
Then today we would not have Ruto as president because somebody.
Probably it was just his personal.
So that's what I'm saying. The fact that it went through, and if you look at what's happening in most of these West African countries, the power is temporary, and we need to guard it very, very carefully, because if it had gone to the wrong person, we don't know where it would be. Yes.
I'm looking at a situation here, Brian, where we have really made progress in as far as our election and electoral process is concerned. From 2010, the era of single party rule, now we get into multi-party politics, and here we are. But every electoral cycle, we have to get to a situation where there is that tension, there is anxiety, and that sense of uncertainty on what's going to happen next from ground zero. We all remember what really happened at the KICC, the Kivuitu election. Kivuitu saying somebody is trying to cook something somewhere, but that was never resolved. Why are we not getting it right? Even after the promulgation of the new constitution, we still find ourselves getting to the same point where we thought the constitution is going to help us. Brian?
Yeah. First, let me start with what I remember from the Bomas. I remember the choir so vividly, and how to me as an enthusiast of art, I can correctly remember how the place of art in in such serious settings, because I believe it really quelled. We keep talking about it here, but at the place of art in while dealing with these important issues, I think art has a role in everything that we do as a society. But to answer your question, the Electoral Commission of Kenya and its legal dispensation, in the past, in the Kivitu Commission, the chairperson had all the say, so that if the chairperson says this, the other members of the commission were mere employees or mere, they were given mere roles. But you remember the IBC, when it was established, it created the offices of commissioners. And in this regard, we had 7 commissioners. And I remember during this Bomas of Kenya event,
yes,
each and every commissioner was given a role in announcing some set of results. I remember at some point the vice chairperson would announce some results. Some commissioners like Commissioner Jagaya, Nyangaya were announcing results. Irene Masit, Gulie, every commissioner was involved in announcing a set of results. But towards the end of the declaration, you remember 4 commissioners out of the 7 moved to Serena to disown the results. And I remember
the so-called Cherera 4.
The Cherera 4 went to disown this result. And you realize that under the Constitution, decisions of the IBC are made. The decisions of the IBC are made by a majority, right? And under the IBC Act, it is made by a majority. But the Constitution is still clear on who announces the results of the commission of the election. And you'd remember one of the conversations, like Engineer said, that we should have is how do we achieve electoral justice? Because under the law, the only person who can declare a result is the chairperson.
Yes.
And in his absence, the vice chairperson. And in their both absences, one commissioner of the IBC. And this conversation needs to progress because as an African continent, I think there has been an improvement in the Kenyan election system, but we need to strategize and know, and probably that is what they are currently discussing in Bomas, on the role of commissioners, whether a commissioner can approve a particular result and later disown it, or whether a commissioner has a right to be wrong, whereby I declared this result, but upon introspection and upon investigation, I realized that this election process was incorrect. And I remember it correctly because this really featured in the Supreme Court litigation. Because what the Supreme Court said is that, fine, you disowned the result as the IBC commissioners, but the events before you are disowning the results informed our decision that this is an afterthought. In that, if a commissioner needs to disown a particular set of results or a set of mode of operation, they need not to raise it during the announcement of the result. They need to raise it as early as possible and go through the systems, because the IBC, the only entity that can audit the IBC and any other independent commission is Parliament. So the only thing you can do as a commissioner is, if you identify an electoral flaw early enough, report it to Parliament or call upon Parliament to look at it.
Okay.
Yes.
Very well. That is going to be forming part of a discussion. And very quickly, Ruto keen on opposition leader office that has been with us for some time now. And now that the bipartisan talk team is going to have their sitting today at the Bomas of Kenya, perhaps this is going to be part of their discussion. Stop taking over counties functions. Raila tells Ruto, he was speaking yesterday in Kisii County. Very well. And finally, on the front page of the Standard, this is our agenda. That is on the front page of the Standard. This is our agenda. Whereas President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga have been the faces of the bipartisan talk, Kenyans from all walks of life are also having their say. The committee is receiving memorandum that will be considered in their final report. That is on the front page of the Standard. Why don't you take your final copy of a copy of your favorite paper and take a look. Police brutality, delayed justice, top agenda as team resumes talks. That is, again, as far as the bipartisan talks is concerned. Issues raised include extrajudicial executions and enforced disappearances. Petitioners and will not be required to publicly defend their submissions. That is what is here. Ruto, Gachagua urged Meru leaders to work in unity for development and a drinking den that's now churning out adult scholars. Do we need to go there, gentlemen? We don't have to. We don't have to. We have to remain a sober county. All right. Very well. How about I take you through the front page of our international papers? Let me start very quickly on the front page of the BBC. This is the situation in Morocco. Race against time to save Morocco quake survivors. This is what is here in the front page of the BBC. Survivors, and now villagers dig hand by hand to find those who are still trapped with a few signs of unofficial numbers. So far, that is what is there, updated almost 10 hours ago. The situation says that Morocco faces a race against time to save those trapped under the rubble of, rubble by Friday's earthquake as emergency services battle to supply remote areas. And some of the people say that either their kin are dead or are missing. Those same tools, they may now need to prepare graves of some of the thousands killed in the earthquake. That is there. And the government reported that at least 2,122 people were killed and more than 2,421 injured, and many critically injured, of course. The 6.8 magnitude tremor collapsed homes, blocked roads, and swayed buildings as far as the country's northern coast. That is on the front page of the BBC. And finally, France 24. What do we have here? Spain's football chief, Rubiales, quits over unwanted World Cup kiss. Okay. That's interesting. So Spanish Football Federation chief Luis Rubiales quit his post on Sunday after 3 weeks of scandal over allegations he gave as unsolicited keys to a player on the women's national team as they celebrated their World Cup victory last month. Okay, that was a deadly kiss, so to speak. So his kiss of player Jamie Hermoso after the World Cup win in Sydney, August 20th, had caused outrage among players, government officials, and many in the wider Spanish society, and raised questions over sexism in sport. Gentlemen, how about here in our country? A lot was speaking around 3 or 4 weeks ago of Cabinet Secretary of Sports, that is Ababu Namwamba, and it seems that we've forgotten, and here life goes on. Nyamari.
Yes.
This is Kenya.
This is Kenya.
This is Kenya.
The sport in this country, I'm sorry to say that it's pathetic.
Yes.
Because we cannot manufacture a national team, we cannot get a national coach to do a 5-year term and take the football in this country to a next level. In fact, whenever we get international coaches to come here and coach our team, we do better. We even go into the international level, but after that, he either resigns or he is fired.
Or he gets frustrated and
and he goes away. And then we are back to square one. Not even square one. There's no square at all. So this state of sport in this country needs to be given a keen eye, because Kenya is made of youths. A number of them are talented, and that talent is being wasted. The question is, what is the government doing about this talent in respect to sport? What kind of infrastructure has been put in place, to support sport in this country? It is not just about them waking up and going into their villages, whatever social areas to go and do practices. They need to be recognized and being brought back to yes.
On that note, I think it's also fair to send a message of condolence to our colleague Sean Kadovilis. If you all remember Sean Kadovilis, who was an enthusiast of sports, remember the last Safari Rally at Naivasha. He was the main commentator. He was at the KICC. He's been with us for quite some time. Sean Kadovilis collapsed was it on Friday at his staircase apartment staircase. He collapsed and he took his last. So as far as that's concerned, as a media fraternity, we say pole to the family of Sean Kadovilis. And Sean, please continue doing your job whichever point of the world you are in. We celebrate you. Okay. So, gentlemen, the situation here is 48 hours of drama at the Bomas of Kenya. The bipartisan talks is resuming their talks today, but I want to take a keen look on what is happening. The question I asked Brian and Frank now, let me ask you, why are we not getting it right every electoral cycle? I am so sure that we are still talking about the opening of Sava. 1 year down the line, Kenyans have not forgotten. Politicians, probably Kenyans have forgotten, but the politicians have not forgotten. Are we going to sustain the same momentum until the next general election, or is it going to end just by saying that let's drop it, let's open it? Is it going to be a ping-pong game until the end of this cycle, and then we get to another electoral cycle?
The question goes down deep into the hearts of individual persons. Because the structures have been in place. It is just about you as a person, you as a politician, to respect that which has been put on paper and give it the interpretation that it really requires. Because the IEBC Act, the commission, the work is well stipulated. What is supposed to be done, at what time, the role of each and every player in this electoral system is clearly spelled out. The question is, as my colleague said, how do we ensure that as a country, the structures, electoral structures that have been put in place serve that purpose, and they are not subdued by personal interests of players or politicians from either side. Mr. Oloo, you will remember that at Bomas, the chairperson was being called. The chairperson, every single person who had an interest in that election wanted to see the chairperson. The question is, why could they not just sit there, have trust in that system, and let them do the work that they are supposed to be doing correctly without any form of intimidation? You understand? Without any form of intimidation. Now, on the other side, why would we have a commission that is divided? For a period of more than 5 years, these commissioners have been organizing this specific election, which takes place after every 5 years. Why is it that they could not agree on some issues? Why is it that these commissioners could not come out as a commission? They came out as a divided persons, everybody pulling to his side of choice. And so those are the issues that at the end of the day, they make the country, the citizens, to be vulnerable, to be weighed by feelings, if I can say so. And there is need for every Kenyan to take a place and take a time to get informed and read what is expected when an electioning period comes. Yes.
And you see, what really happens at the Bomas of Kenya, Crispus, is that a majority of Kenyans were really dependent on the results which were being displayed at the main, at the big screen there. But still, that was not enough. Everything was going as per the portal, from the tallying center, from the grassroots until the national tallying center, which is the Bomas of Kenya. But the case would have not been complete without the hand of all the commissioners, plus the chair, the entire IBC team. We saw Cherera 4 unexpectedly going to Serena, and at this particular point, nobody expected to hear that. We also remember that the last general election, we also had the same. Some commissioners also walked out. How do we cure this? Where we have an entire electoral team, but 2, 3, 4 people feel like there is something amiss here. How do we cure this?
You know, looking at our democratic process, probably it has been in existence for the last 30 years. Because before that, we were a single-party country.
Yes.
So the multi-party system, the pluralism that we are enjoying today, has probably been in existence for the last 30 years. But if you go to other jurisdictions, say the US, India, UK, where their democracy has been in place for more than maybe 50, 100 years, there must be systems that they are put in place to cure some of this process. Because in those countries, you don't have a chairman of any commission who declares results. It's purely a system. You have in America what we call exit polls, which are declared by media houses. They don't rely on any commissioner declaring the results. It's a system that works. In 2007, we had results being mentioned by one media house contrasting another media house. And then when the chairman came, he said, I
remember this, the same thing also happened last year.
He declared, I don't know who was president. I don't know who really won this election in 2007. Because at the point where we were coming nearer to the conclusion of the election, the numbers started changing. And you could see now, you don't trust the system. Now you're waiting for a human being to give you a position. Come back to 2022, we still had numbers, then the system hanged. And now we were waiting for a human being to come and declare. So is it about human beings or is it about system that we need to cure? Because if it's about system, then the Constitution has already done everything that it can do in addressing the systems. But in terms of the values and ethics of a country, it's an individual responsibility. So as long as we put people in office who their allegiance is to a political coalition or a political party or a community, we will never get a transparent election. If you look at the Cherera Four, at the point where they came, what government did we have? We had what we call the handshake government. And when they disowned these elections, they were disowning because they were refusing the Kenya Kwanza win. But they were convinced that the win belongs to the appointing authority at the time when they came to office. So it tells that their allegiance was not to Kenyans, but to the coalition that promoted them to office.
That's a risky affair.
And now, today, we are insisting we stop the process of getting commissioners so that political parties or political interests can be part and parcel of that process. So are we sure these commissioners will be serving Kenyans or the political coalitions of the day? So it's not about systems anymore. It's about people and what those people's, the interest they hold for certain people. So therefore, if we agree to this kind of arrangements where political parties, especially big political parties, take control of determining who is appointed as a commissioner, then we can be sure that the elections will be either declared one side or the other, depending on where the allegiance of those commissioners is, and not what the system says. Not what me and you go and vote, and the numbers are counted, and those numbers are declared as this. So we cannot really trust the process as long as it is about people making that determination.
Exactly.
No system.
And Brian, part of the recommendation from Azimio, even as they start their discussion today, it talks at the Bomas of Kenya, is that they want the political parties to be part and parcel of picking the electoral commissioners. Will it cure such kind of cases that we've always seen during elections?
Yes, Victor. What I know is that the electoral process is a democratic process, and we have to agree that the Kenyan elections is driven by the people and also by the political players. So I believe that the structure of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission must reflect its independence, in that it must be independent of the political players and also independent of government control or even independent of the media, right? So what I believe is that the political players can take part or can play a role in the selection of commissioners, but even as they are involved in the selection of commissioners, these commissioners take an oath of allegiance to the independence, all right, so that the independence should come first than you are appointing authorities. You've seen, even in the disciplined forces, the person who appoints the chief of defense forces is the president, but the Kenya Defense Forces rules and regulations require that they pledge allegiance to the nation. Yes.
All right. Just 1 second. Let me also play allegiance to my employer and take a break. Okay, let's take a break. I'll come back with you, Brian, for you to finish your statement there. Let's take a break. We'll be right back after this break. It's almost 8 a.m. Time flies, right? We'll be right back. welcome back. Still having our discussion here with Frank Nyamari, who is a lawyer and political analyst. Did I just call you Francis?
Me.
Wathimba. Crispus. I beg your pardon. Crispus Wathimba, who is an engineer, and Brian Onyango, who is also advocate of the High Court. Okay, so gentlemen, let me circle back with you. Brian, so you're saying, the question asks, why are we not getting it right? And at this particular point, how are we going to cure the situation?
Yes, I think more systems, and people have argued that the Kenyan electoral systems, the Kenyan electoral space has so many systems, but I believe it still needs to have as much systems because we are a developing democracy. So, for example, the politicians, we cannot say that the politicians should not be involved in the process of selecting the IBC. Otherwise, they will always have an excuse that we did not participate in their selection. What we must ensure that is that the selection of members of the IBC does not reflect their independence, so that whenever we are choosing commissioners of the IBC, we are not choosing them because they are likely to align with a particular political ideology, but because they can stand firm and stick by what is right and stick by the law, right? So I believe the Bomas process is likely to end up with new commissioners, considering all the 7 we don't have a commissioner as we speak. There's no commissioner because the three commissioners, their term expired, and the 3 of them resigned and 1 was hounded out through the process required by law. So in short, the electoral system in Kenya, we must still invest in systems. For example, you'll remember that the past election had a system where anyone streaming from wherever, even in a foreign country, could just log in and download a form and seek to verify. So if both political players, if a political player or a candidate can invest in a system, and as a system as strong as the system with the IBC, so that this electoral process is verifiable, because the Constitution requires that the electoral system must be accountable and verifiable, so that if a political player can easily verify that this is the vote I got in a polling station and this is the vote that has been declared, and with all honesty, both my supporters and even the media can have access to this, we will have a good electoral system. I'm
just wondering why we are not getting the system right, because a majority of people would say that the system is prone to hacking. We have got our money transfer systems across the country, money platform. I mean, we have our system here. But if I send you 10 shillings, that's exactly what you'll receive. And you'll never call the other person, have you received 10 shillings or you've received 8 shillings? It's the same as that. Why are we not having a transparent system, Frank? Because at the end of the day, it's a system that even when you go for a petition, the Supreme Court also had to look at the system, the processes, and the end result.
See, the question I remember vividly from one of the Supreme Court judges, Smokin Wanjala, is that when a vote is cast and it is being transported in a ballot, and the result is being transmitted into the National Tallying Center, the question was, the result which is transmitted and the form which is transported, are they the same? If not, what happened in between the air that the result at the vote is different from the result in the ballot? And so it is basically what you've said, that if you send me 10 shillings, I need not to call you back and ask you, did you really send me 10 shillings or 9 shillings? You know, it is based on
end-to-end kind
an end-to-end kind of system or technology that is easily any illiterate person can see. That is what it means by verifiable. And then there is also the aspect of it being simple. You know, the Constitution is clear that elections have to be simple. How simple is that process? From the point of voter registration all the way to the point of results being announced. How simple is it? How verifiable is it? Once we attain those two aspects, our electoral system will be superb. Yes.
You know what really happens is, Crispus, the most contentious position is the top seat, the presidential seat. That is the most and the hotly contested. Why so?
You know, Kenya is a presidential system kind of government where the president holds, may not be told in law absolute, but he literally holds absolute power. Even as you could see, the governors, they have their autonomy, they have their own budgets, but still they have to rely on the national government for budgetary support. And therefore it tells you that the president wields a lot of power, and therefore whoever occupies that office has a great influence, not just to the ordinary lives of Kenyans, but even the way the government and governments run within the country. And therefore, this is a very critical office for anyone or any people who have interest to be able to be part of. But I also want to agree with my colleague here is that the systems are in place. The systems are working. Like we have M-Pesa, it works very well. The problem we have as a country is that if we spend 5 years stealing from the people through corruption, we should not also expect that the very people who have stolen from us will deliver a genuine election. So as long as we take the same people for election and re-election, the very people who have been robbing us, you really expect them to give us a genuine election? So as long as we continue feeding into our system dishonest, corrupt leaders, we will always have an election that will always question. And many Kenyans have resignated, they have resigned and said, this is it. Politicians are very dirty people. We will not deal with them. Let them get to office. When they get to office, me, I'll deal with my problems. But the reality is today, we are having a huge cost of living. And the only person you can now rely on is a politician who makes a government policy that defines or determines how your cost of living should be. And therefore, for you being indecisive in your decision-making process, you've allowed somebody who is incompetent to take office, and he has subjected you to a miserable life. Remember, 8 million Kenyans never voted.
And that is a warning trend even to
and
the
that is where the problem is. Those 8 million could have contributed in making a better decision, but they didn't. They could have contributed in making a decisive election if they participated, but they didn't. But now our election was so close that it was very hard to really give each side of the camp that satisfaction that I've won or I've lost. And that's why up to today we still have one side saying we didn't lose this thing.
And what does that really show to our democracy? 8 million people not going for an election.
Kenyans still don't understand that beyond electing a president, these other leaders are very important. And therefore, many Kenyans resign to the fact that we have only two options, either Raila Amolo Odinga or William Ruto. So they did not care even to elect other leaders. So they said, after all, it will be Raila, it will be Ruto. I don't care. After all, 15 years ago, these people were on one side. What is so different today? So they ended up not even bothering to participate in an election. But when you look at other leaders, members of parliament, senate, governors, MCAs, they did not even bother to participate. So that's where the tragedy is. So if we cannot cure this system by putting in people of integrity, don't expect an integrity in terms of the kind of elections we get.
How do we cure a case of a split commission? Brian, when you have commissioners going to announce an election, how do we cure that? So that the politicians, yes, as per the bipartisan talks, they need politicians to be in the process of selecting commissioners of IBC. But how will we ensure, even with the system put in place, that even to the last point of an election, they will stick together and announce a block result?
Yes, thank you, Victor. One thing we must remember is that the Constitution does not require commissioners to be united. What it requires each commissioner is to stick with the truth, so that if you have 7 commissioners and there are 7 versions of truth, the law allows you to stick to each commissioner to stick to your own version. But just to put the conversation further, I believe, like Okilia said, if the election system is simple, accountable, and verifiable, then the commissioners would not need to speak by one voice. They will just need, to give access to the data. Because, for example, if the results of a particular constituency are publicly displayed and can be accessed, and the security features of the forms that are required by the law are there on the display, so that the members of the press, the members of the legal profession, the general members of the public, and even the courts can have access, then we will achieve a system where we do not need all these commissioners to stick, because as it stands, all the commissioners need not to agree, so long as the chairman has the final word. And I think it's a very chaotic system, because if the chairman decides to declare a result that is not, that is not verifiable, then the only option is to go to court, and the court will then stick to what is verifiable. So it's very important to still invest in systems and in commissioners and leaders who will not stick with political ideologies, but will stick to the right thing, and will stick to ensuring that the commission has systems that can operate, even in the absence of the physical absence of the given commissioners.
Let me just cut you short and just ask you a simple question. Imagine a family setup where there's a family setup, and we are working as a team, but you see, mi ndio mzee hapa, so whatever you say does not matter. Wewe mtoto, wewe mama ni nini, what you are going to say, I'm the final. You would imagine the kind of a setup of family or a house that would be.
Yes.
Quite compare it to IBC. Commissioners are here, but the final word remains with the chairman.
Yes, and it's very good that you're bringing it into a family setup, because to be quite honest, the fact that as a family setup we always listen to one person, it has created some level of cohesion within our families, to be sincere. But even as we create this level of cohesion, there are certain ideas that are more progressive than the ideas of the father or the head of the family that have been ignored, and at the end of the day the family has suffered. So it has to be a very critical balance between having one supreme person to create cohesion, and also having the ability to listen to these other people and have them bring something to the table. So it's a very critical balance that I would not want to absolutely say that it is the right thing, but I still insist that systems, if we put the correct systems in other developed countries, the UK and even India, what they're relying on in their democracy to ensure that it's good is systems. If they have a system where any person sitting anywhere can easily, clearly see that this is the real result, then it will not matter who is a bigger person from the other. So systems are created through conversations, through law reform, and also through participation of everyone. And I'm glad that the talks that are going on in Bomas have now included the wider public. I just hope that the ideologies that will be brought to the table will not be ignored, because that is what usually happens.
Public participation. But when you look at it, Frank, then why is it a do or die in an electoral cycle? I'm happy that we are using some jurisdictions, developed countries, US, India. Why are we not getting other countries talking about Kenya, developed systems like Kenya? They have got a system that is working for them, that you and I will go to an election. We cast our ballot from the comfort of our home. We come to work and watch on a television, and the presidential or a winner will be announced without any chaos.
Yes. First of all, going back to the family issue, we have had families that have been successful and we have had families that have been broken instantly. In fact, you will hear that there is this family that they just got married the other day, and after a few months, they are seeking divorce. And that is basically the whatever that we are having here as a country. That at some specific time we have a good commission which comes in. We have involved the political players. We have involved everyone who wants to be involved. But along the way, I don't know where we lose it, such that we cannot have that consistency whereby we are respecting the law, we are sticking to the oath of office that we have taken, and we are appreciating the values that we've had as a country in respect to electoral justice. We do not seem to really have that continuous grip of these values. And at that point, we lose it. That is why, at some point, Kenya was the heaven of peace, but currently,
people are mocking us. I mean,
exactly.
Even across our borders here, Tanzania, they mock us every single day.
Now, when we have a national conversation that is going on, and we have a deputy president who is mocking that conversation, what results do you expect in future?
Okay.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, assume you have a united commission speaking in one voice. Let's give another example with the family setup. People would say, you know, mababu zetu, they lived until Shosho was, I think, 90, Mzee was around 95, because they stuck together, no matter what. Whatever brought them together, we are not privy to that. But Mzee would only tell you, you know, we worked as a team. Mimi and my grandma and your grandma, we worked as a team. I'm trying to get a scenario, Crispus, where we have new commissioners, whichever will come out of Bomas, and they say the new commissioners are here, you know, represented by the Law Society of Kenya, the church, the clergy, to speak, etc., different bodies. But they remain intact until the last day of an election and say, as a commission, this is our stand. Whichever it goes, it is Frank or it is Brian or it is Wathimba who is the president, no matter what. Give me that picture, how it would look like a day or immediately after that declaration.
You see, such a scenario where 7 people speak in one mind is highly unlikely. But is that what we desire?
Exactly.
It's not what we desire.
Yes.
But if you look at the Supreme Court, for example, it has 7 judges. But not all the time they agree. They always have dissenting opinions. As Wakili has said, there could be 7 truths.
And what if we have a shift that this time around, perhaps, or even out of all the 7 commissioners, 5 will say it was okay?
Yes. So the issue is, the challenge we have with the IBC regulation is that the chairman has the final
absolute power and say.
You understand?
Yeah.
As opposed to where other 7 or 9 minds come together and it is the majority that takes the day. That's the only difference. So do we need to cure that issue where we say it's not an issue of the chairman alone, it's an issue of the majority. So that if the majority say it is this side that has won, then that side has won.
Yes.
As opposed to one person.
And I believe, gentlemen, that was also raised during the Supreme Court.
Yes. So if that is the issue that we need to address, then we need to address it now. So that, because all the systems that we have put in place, I don't see where the systems have failed us. The issue is the character of the people we have put in place. Those 4 said we have disagreed. These 3 said we have disagreed and this is the person we have declared. But one person who declared, said, I am declared this as the president, overruled everyone. And that's where the challenge is. As opposed to that, there were 4, majority who disagreed with it. But the law does not allow the 4 to have their say. So we have to address some of those structural challenges that probably the law has provided. But I also want to ask, as a country, do we really value the process of election? Kenyans have been served to, 5 elections or 6 elections this far in terms of a plural system. But none of them, I think only one, we can say in 2002, that really gave an election that many or majority of Kenyans were satisfied.
And we cannot even say that in 2002 there was that sense of system and
and there was no, there were no systems. But Kenyans really believed this was a true, genuine outcome of what we desired as a country. And the participation was very huge. Over 65% of Kenyans participated in an election. This time around, it was very low. but we still can't trust the outcome. So is it about system, or is it about the season of the election? Is it about the candidates? Is it about the economic situation at that time? We don't know, because things change. I recently came from Turkey, which had an election in the month of May. They went through an earthquake that they lost a lot of lives. But 3 months down the line, they don't even talk about politics. They are busy dealing with their issues. They have huge inflation problems like us. Their currency has lost so much value, more than even ours. But they have moved on with their lives. But for us, 1 year later, we are still having governors who are still being fought. We are still having the president being questioned if he's the president or not. We are still having an opposition which has not accepted that they are not the government. We are a country that keeps politicking and politic, and that's why our neighbors, they laugh at us, and we need to really take care, because very soon our neighbors will be ahead of us in terms of the economic progress that they have made, and we'll now be relying on them. Remember, as a country, we cannot even feed ourselves. We rely on our neighbors to feed us. Then our politics also has a problem. We also have to call our neighbors to come and cure a political problem. So what are we becoming as a country? How different are we from Somalia that relies on Kenya for its security? When we rely on our neighbors for food, we rely on our neighbors to come and sort out political squabbles. We rely on our neighbors for electoral systems.
Yes.
What, as a country, are we saying we are great of? We need to restore the greatness of this country.
Okay, we need to restore the greatness of this country. Gentlemen, a dollar is almost hitting a 150 as of now. I don't know how we are going to make it. Imagine a dollar is 200.
One of the things I found in Turkey that is very interesting, as much as the Turkish lira has lost a lot of value, they don't import their food. They don't import a lot of things. So even if the lira went to 200, 3 times to the dollar, they don't care, because everything is within their market. If this country, we were not importing beauty stuff, we were not importing cars, we were not importing food, we were not importing fuel, we were self-sufficient within our market. Whether the dollar went to 300, it would not matter. But the problem is, as long as the dollar is very high, and we're importing, 80% of what we consume we import, we have a problem.
You know, you've talked about not importing beauty products, and you're making our own. I would imagine how Brian and I would look like after applying some of the products around. No pun intended. Okay, let's take a break. We come back. I want to take a look at what you should be expecting from the Bomas of Kenya. The team is starting their talks today, and what should you expect at the end of that discussion? They have got a timeline to beat, so what should we be looking forward to? Let's take a break. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us. Right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We are just now finalizing this discussion 1 year down the line, and we're just taking a look back on what really happened at the Bomas of Kenya and what we as a nation should be taking a look, actually handling moving forward in as far as our election is concerned. So gentlemen, let's just finalize this. The talks resuming today at the Bomas of Kenya, Frank. I really want us to get into this discussion and what should we expect moving forward now that they have almost everything now to their disposal.
Not just me, but entirely all Kenyans expect a lot from the talks in Bomas. We need to see if it is going to be an electoral commission that is going to be put in place. We need to see individuals who respect the rule of law. We need to see individuals who are not there to front their own personal interests. We need to see, as my colleague in the profession said, individuals who are allegiance to the oath of office, who are giving allegiance to the nation, not the power, those who have brought them into office. We need to see individuals who are coming to reflect the values and the virtues that Kenyans hold so dearly in their hearts. We need to see a commission that is going to give a credible election, a verifiable election, a simple election process. That is what is expected of all Kenyans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Crispus?
Well, looking at the Finance Bill 2023, many Kenyans presented their memorandums, but when the final draft was made, many Kenyans felt like very little of their contribution was
they were given a raw deal.
considered. So I just hope and pray that the same will not suffer with this bipartisan talk, where many of us will go and present our proposals, but very few of them will be considered. It is our prayer and hope that the wishes of Kenyans will be listened to, will be carried in the final draft of the bipartisan talk. And if there are any legislative amendments that will be made, they should be supported by both sides of the House if they are for the interest of the country. But I also want to agree with Wakili. Vested interest should be kept aside. My fear is that what we may see being discussed, or we may perceive to be discussed, may not be the real discussion on the ground.
Yeah.
What could be happening on the ground are probably very selfish interests, which may derail the talk, because you've seen the kind of talk that is coming outside the bombers. You know, when people go to public rallies, the kind of conversations they are saying, we don't want these talks are not good. It tells you that things are not okay. Or maybe there are certain issues that are being presented which they totally don't agree with. Because if things were okay in Bomas, then the noise outside would not be as loud as it is today. So clearly we are looking forward to a very difficult time as a country, where politics will still continue occupying our discussion, and which is very unfortunate. The William Ruto administration has only 3 years to go. 3 years to go. The last year you cannot even plan with it. And therefore, if you are going to waste a lot of this time with politics, like we have for the last 1 year, then I don't know how much you'll be able to achieve. And it's very sad for this country.
Interestingly, the conversation I usually have with some of the politicians, they say that Banatuna time. It's over. For them, there is no time. It's like an election is in the next few months to come. Brian, your final remarks.
Yes, my final remarks. First, to begin with the bombers discussions. What, as Kenyans, we should be having? We should also be having our own discussions individually to introspect about the kind of leaders we want to elect in future, because we will not keep on convening bombers with the taxpayers' expense. So we should also have private conversations amongst ourselves on the kind of leaders we want. But just to conclude, allow me to weigh in on 3 issues. Number one is Engineer and I have referred to other developed countries, and I think we've alluded to Kenya being an underdeveloped country. Let me remind our viewers that Kenya is actually in the maps in many things, and not only in athletics, but even the jurisprudence that come from the Supreme Court. Courts in Morocco, courts in Ireland, even in Europe, refer to decisions which are made in Kenya. And that's something we need to remind our people that, yes, we are referring to international, to other countries, but other people are also referring to us in other aspects. So we should also keep on pushing so that they refer to us in all other aspects, including democracy. The second thing I'd like to mention, it was alluded to in our conversation, is sports. Like when you read the international headline about the Spanish, the coach who kissed a player and is now subject of a scrutiny, here in Kenya it boils down to the discipline that we expect as in the sports sector. And I'm glad I have the privilege of knowing what is going on in the sports sector. And sports is internationally run, in that every sport has an international federation. For example, we have the FIFA that is regulating football in Kenya and football in the world. FIFA requires that sports is not managed by the government. It is managed by the federation of, for example, the Football Kenya Federation. Athletics, the World Athletics Confederation requires that athletics is run by a confederation in Kenya, so that the ministry for sports to be successful in Kenya, and I'm glad it is happening so through the Kenya Sports Academy, empower these sports federations, and I believe that is what is happening. The third thing I'd like to clarify is that even as we are going for the presidential elections in the Law Society of Kenya, there's also a very presidential elections in the Law Society of Kenya is a 2-term. You serve for 2 years and you go home, we elect a new leader. But there's also a very important role that is being contested for in this election that is coming up early next year. That is the representative of the Law Society of Kenya to the Judicial Service Commission. And this is a very powerful position.
You don't have that right now?
No, we will have it together with the election.
Okay.
Yes, the election for the representative of the Law Society of Kenya.
Or will also be an elective post?
Yes, it is an elective post, and it happens after 5 years. So Macharia Njeru is exiting. There are so many candidates who have declared their interest, including the current president and a lawyer I know, Mwanza. And it's very important for lawyers to understand that the role of the Judicial Service Commission will also weigh in the kind of decisions that we'll be getting from the courts and the kind of independence we'll achieve from the courts. So the members of the public should understand that the role that the lawyers play is to preserve the rule of law, and that's why the election, even of the Judicial Service Commission, is as important.
When you started this conversation, gentlemen, I started asking Frank, why are you not seeing your names there? Why, talking of different people, why not you?
Yeah, very soon. Probably. We have not declared.
You should go out there and start pitching your ears.
Yeah, the positions have not declared.
All right. Thank you so much. Frank Nyamari, who is a lawyer and a political analyst, thank you so much for coming. Crispus Wathimba, engineer, thank you so much for always being with us. And
Victor, you'll allow me just to mention something
in 2 seconds, kindly.
About sports.
Yes.
We had a team of young Kenyans who went to participate at the Africa Youth Chess Championship over the last 10 days in Egypt. We were very lucky. One young man called Nathaniel, 8 years old, got us gold. And a young girl called Cassidy got us a bronze medal on the under-12 category. And I want to congratulate the Kenyan team. We had around 80 young children under the age of 17 who participated in this tournament, a very strong one. And most of them have been able to improve their rating. You know, chess is a rated game. So most of them have been able to improve their rating. And one of the things I want to encourage the sports ministry is to continue supporting this program, because the more our young people have international exposure, the better they improve in the game. And this game has an opportunity for them to be able to attract a lot of sponsorships, scholarships, and get new opportunities to be able to further their education.
Talent pays.
So thank you so much for the sports government, ministry, for the support they give us for the last 10 days.
We are all aspects and all products of talent. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Brian Onyango, thank you so much for coming. He's an advocate of the High Court. All right. Okay, Wakenya, thank you so much for watching. We've just had our session, Eye on Politics. That's all we had time for this particular morning. Asanteni sana for coming to the show.
Thanks.
All right. GMK is not yet done. We are taking a break, and Vivian Msichana Wandegwa will be coming up shortly with the next segment. So please stay with us. My name is Victor Oloo. Have a good morning. Bye-bye for now. Yes, Msichana Wandegwa. Yes.